For those that don't know, this is the morning show.
Good morning, Ed, Lisa, and Dry.
So this morning show is brought to you by Autoverse Records, purveyors of fine independent hip hop, and the recent release, Another Triumph of Ghetto Engineering by rapper Open Mike Eagle, which is out now everywhere in every internet connected computer device that has access to some sort of music app. So you can play it, share it, and then play it and share it some more. Speaking of which, what we're going to do today is go over the pitchfork review for Another Triumph of Ghetto Engineering. The score here is right here behind the chat, a 7.7 on the pitchforks. Here's an interesting exercise just to begin with. 7.7 for this project. If you go to the bottom here, it'll have more reviews for Open Mike Eagle. Component system with the auto reverse, 7.8. Anime trauma and divorce, 8.0. I cracked 8. I was very proud of cracking 8. Brick body kit still daydream, 0.1. Highest so far. Hella Personal Film Festival, 7.3. Great for, not great. Big for an earthquake. Not the biggest for an album score. Dark Comedy, the first album that I've got reviewed on the Pitchforks, 8.0. All right, so we're going to go through this review and we're going to review this review. First of all, it's by Yusef. I do not know how to pronounce his last name. Soror is what I would guess. First of all, big thanks to Pitchfork for covering the album, because they don't cover every album. As you see, they've only covered 6 of mine. And for a while, like in my early career, they wouldn't pay attention to me at all. Gratitude for Pitchfork for covering it, because it's beneficial. Some word like that. It's not quite beneficial, but I do appreciate it. And thank you for Yusuf Soror for writing it. Now, one thing I definitely want to give Mr. Soror a lot of props for is that you can tell he listened to the project a lot, really tried to digest it, really tried to analyze it, and what that means, especially in these days when you don't get typically a big physical layout with a bunch of stuff written on it. And we used to get CD books that would have like fold outs that would have all of these images and text on them, and they would give you so much context about a project. Nowadays, you get a download, you get to see the cover. Like for this project, the vinyl isn't coming for months later, so there's nothing physical to look at to get extra context. So what Yusuf had was the album and the press release, which didn't give much. So he had to really dig in and do an analysis. This can't be an easy thing to do, especially with rap lyrics where there's like so many words in a song. Sometimes titles, in my case especially, can be misleading on this particular project, because sometimes I name these songs things that has nothing to do with the words in the song. Like I Bled on Stage at First Staff, for instance. That title is more about what the song feels like than what the words actually are. This isn't easy work. So armed with advice for the next generation and lots of thank you notes. Oh, I'm shouting out Yusuf Soror for doing that analysis, because what I learned early on in my career was that not everybody takes the time or puts in the effort to do an analysis if something isn't immediately apparent to them, especially in rap music. A lot of people have very low expectations for the themes that are going to be in a rap project. So if something isn't clear, a lot of times there's even people who are paid to do reviews won't put in the effort to try to figure out what's happening or what's trying to be communicated. So I give Yusuf Soror props for that, for sure. Armed with advice for the next generation and lots of thank you notes. Open Mike Eagle's funny and reflective 9th album seeks a sense of closure within his discography. Now that is the first of many bold statements. It almost approaches the level of proclamation. Seeks a sense of closure. Now, what that sounds like it means to me is that this reviewer thinks that part of my goal or something with this project was to sort of tie together all of my projects, like in the context of my albums, like this is supposed to tie it all together. It also kind of sounds like saying I'm retiring or something, which is absolutely not the case. I think that there is some truth in that, but I would put it in a different way. What I would say is that what I'm trying to do with this project, and it's similar to what I was doing on Component System, is I'm really shining a light on the legacy of independent and underground hip hop that created me. That's something that's very front mind for all of this, is to celebrate the legacy of indie rap and the history of underground rap music, because I feel like it often goes unsaid. And if there's a sense of looking back, trying to tie something together, it's more about seeing how this entire network of musicians and artists and rappers, like some of which are really being lauded right now, some of which are still toiling in obscurity, but to really try to draw the connections between all of them and present this constellation of artists that I think is very, very important. So that's why you have a guest verse from Young Z and a guest verse from Blue. Like, Young Z is one of the first underground rappers I ever heard in my life, like in 1996, right? But that's the music that drew me into hip hop. So being that that's what inspired me, like, that's part of the lineage of all of this. So it was definitely one of my goals to try to tie all this back together genre wise, but not so much within my own discography, if that makes sense. Another triumph of ghetto engineering should have a familiar ring to it. The title first appeared on a print illustration by McKay Felt and sold with an exclusive vinyl edition of Open Mike Eagle's 2022 release, Component System with the Auto Reverse. This is true. If you got the special edition vinyl of Component System with the Auto Reverse, there's a poster in it by McKay Felt that has another triumph of ghetto engineering, kind of breadcrumbing as far as I'm concerned. And here's a little piece of Open Mike Eagle lore. That illustration was originally commissioned as the cover for Component System with the auto reverse, but not with the text. Just the McKay Felt drawing of, like, it's a stereo system with my head, Riff's head, and Video Dave's head on it. I was inspired at that point by Ghostface Killer's Iron Man cover, because it had Capadonna and Raekwon on it, just like Raekwon's had Ghostface on it. I really like that idea of, like, yeah, this is a solo project, but I'm rapping with my homies a lot, so I want to have them on the cover. And I ended up going away from that and towards the stereo head motif, because I like that. I like the impact of that image better. But props to Yusuf Saror for knowing this. I mean, I don't know if he was a fan, so he had that album. I mean, there were only, 1,000 of them ever made. So only 1,000 of those posters were ever made. And it's not like never showed that image publicly as far as I remember. So, actually, I might have. Actually, I did, because it's on the Bandcamp. So it took a little research. So props for that. The two records share a similar cast of characters, but where Component System focused on the lasting imprint of hip-hop history, Another Triumph plays like an ode to the music and memories that shaped Eagle's own character and career. Now, this is a better way of saying what I think he was trying to say up here. This, I agree with this more. Like an ode to the music and memories that shaped my character and career. Along for the ride are Still Ripped and Video Dave, who appear courtesy of his label Auto Reverse. I don't know if they appear courtesy of anybody, because they're all grown men and I don't sign anybody to an exclusive contract ever, because this is not that sort of operation. So they appear courtesy of the goddamn selves. His longtime producer's child actor. See, you start to get a little wonky here. His longtime producer's child actor. So me and child actor didn't make a song until last year. So long time's a little bit of a stretch there. Definitely long time with Quelle Chris, even though we only have like 3 songs together. The first one was like 2013. So give you that one. Illingsworth, long time for sure. But long time and child actor, that's a little bit of a stretch. A mastering engineer, Daddy Kev, founder of the influential former Los Angeles club night Low End Theory, where Open Mike Eagle and his peers first found their artistic footing. See, Low End Theory, where Open Mike Eagle and his peers first found their artistic footing. If I was trying to get very, very picky with this, I would oppose that particular fact. Because in one sense, it is fair to say that, because when I started releasing albums in 2010, absolutely Low End was a part of that. I was meeting producers that I would work with at Low End Theory. I was certainly a part of that scene. I would have my album release parties at Low End Theory. I must have performed there 10 times. I would be willing to bet I'm the rapper who's had the most performances at Low End outside of No Can Do, aka All City Jimmy, because he was hosting it. But I think the more accurate thing to say artistically was that I found my footing at the Project Blow. Like, that's just craft wise, I'd have to point more towards that than Low End Theory. And Low End Theory was an excellent collective of people, an excellent event to go through, and what an awesome platform to be a part of. I think you'd more have to point at Project Blow if we're talking about me finding my footing. Open Mike Eagle stuffs an abundance of obscure counterculture references and chuckle-worthy ramblings into the album's brief 25 minutes, while also stepping back to prioritize guest verses and vivid imagery. Every album is a little collection of pieces of yesterdays, he admitted on the previous records. Admitted. I don't know about admitted. I think I just said it. I don't think it was like a secret. Here he pays tribute to memory, delivering a career's worth of liner notes with the emotional maturity J. Cole strove for on Note to Self. I do not know what that song is at all, but it's good to tie me into the works of more popular artists. That's probably good for the readers of Pitchfork, because maybe if they like J. Cole, they'll check me out. And I have such a complicated relationship to the idea of J. Cole, but maybe that's for another time. Throughout the album, Eagle thanks scores of people by name, from Thundercat to Dumbfounded to Kenny Siegel. This is interesting here. Thundercat's underlined and Kenny Siegel's underlined. Dumbfounded is not. What that means is Pitchfork has plenty of articles on Thundercat and probably a few articles on Kenny Siegel. It means they have no articles on Dumbfounded, which is sort of curious, Pitchfork. Like, Dumbfounded is in many ways much more popular than me. Why is it that he doesn't have any coverage on Pitchfork? I think that's a very interesting question. I'd love to have Pitchfork weigh in on that sometime. Why Dumbfounded doesn't have any articles on here. I think score people by name as if monologuing at the Thanksgiving table. Okay, I mean, it's not my favorite image, but I get it. The other triumph of ghetto engineering might be 2017's Brick Body Kid Still Daydream, to which this album plays as an unofficial sequel. So look, when I read that, the only link that I could see he could be thinking of is, as he says later in this paragraph, The Wire Season 3, Episode 1, where I talk about a planned demolition. My auntie's building on Brick by the Kid Still Daydream is about the demolition of the Robert Taylor homes. Now, if you were to ask me, was that at the front of my mind when I wrote that song, I would tell you no. But, that's a curious thing, too. Sometimes, as an artist, you're operating on a lot of levels, so maybe what's front of mind isn't the whole story. So maybe in the back of my head there was some correlation, but it wasn't one that I had the intention of drawing a line to. Take that for what it's worth. Spends its opening section whisper rapping the whole day on a Sunday. I guess amorphous fusion of singing and rapping has ripened to a more confident resolve. I think that's true. I think if you look at my early attempts at sing rapping, it wasn't quite as confident. I would venture to say I didn't know what I was doing. I would venture to say that I was doing a lot of stuff in falsetto on my early albums I probably shouldn't have been doing. But I didn't know better because I come from the Project Blow. So what's in me is this rap adventure seeking where there's no limits to what you can do with your voice, whether you know how to do it or not. But I think, and I said this on Component System, at the end of I Retired and I Changed My Mind, I said, I finally know my vocal range. So I think, if anything, that's what you're hearing. I try not to go outside of my vocal range now. I try to maintain my sense of adventurousness. I still hear those melodies. I still want to go there. But I won't be doing a lot of this no more when I'm making rap music. I'm largely cutting that shit out. His amorphous fusion of singing and rapping is ripened to a more confident resolve, while the beats remain sample heavy and hypnotically lethargic. I don't know what that means. It sounds good though. The Wire Season 3 Episode 1 revisits the image of Chicago's now demolished Robert Taylor homes Joined by fellow LA poet Blue for the first song together in 7 years. Winks at the two Brick Body Kids tracks produced by Exile as he grapples with similar themes, isolation, inner conflict years later. I guess I always do that. Did I have those two Exile produced songs from Brick Body Kids still in mind? No. There are certain themes that I always deal with. I would say isolation is always present to some degree. Inner conflict is always present to some degree. I think those are sort of things we struggle with as part of the American condition and maybe the human condition, but I only know it through an American lens. So those are themes I end up dealing with a lot. Chaco, you're asking me, is the project sample heavy? I think it is. I mean, I don't think it's sample free. As he observes the world through more mature lens, Eagle's rapping remains as astute as ever. Astute rapping, that's an interesting adjective to apply to rap music. On a new rap festival called Falling Loud, he provides fatherly advice to those coming of age today, such as his own teenage son, Asa. Well, I got to tell you, I cringed reading that. Not because of the sentiment. I just thought it was so weird that he put Asa's name in the review. And I use Ace's name a lot. Like, I have song titles with Ace's name in it, but I thought that was so strange because I feel like maybe it's unnecessary. This writer has done their research, and I do appreciate that. I don't know, just something about that felt like, why did you feel compelled to say his name right there? I'm not sure it makes the statement, the sentence, or the review any stronger for having put his name in it. So I don't know. It hit me kind of weird when I read that because I don't necessarily know what the reason was. I think if you had just said his own teenage son, that would have sufficed. Playful reminders like "Don't do the shrooms when it's Christmas dinner" underscore the humor and humility of Open Mike Eagle's final wish, and it's also my initial wish. When I die, mix up my ashes into the coffee grounds. Well, I guess it could be final because it's at the end of life, but I read that it's final as the last line of the song. When he finds levity in the inevitable, but rap seems bigger than him now that he's living in a world where his heroes are no longer immortal. Rap has always been bigger than me. I mean, that's why it's always compelling, because rap is always growing, and rap was bigger than me when I first found it. I mean, I guess I don't know what he means by that. Well, you know what? This is what he could mean by that. And if he means this, then he's right. I have made a career on making music that I will be the first to admit is very selfish. I've made a lot of very selfish music. But to me, that was the whole point. Mainstream music, especially when I started making rap, and mainstream music was just so homogenized and everybody was rapping about the same thing all the time, to the point where like I was saying earlier, it was bringing down the expectations of the genre as a whole, because everybody who people heard of that rapped was rapping about the same thing. Now, this is before Kanye started really getting super artistic, before Lil Wayne embraced his weirdness and started calling himself a Martian and all of that. Like, in the early 2010s, it was the most homogenized it had been in ages, and it just felt so boring to me at the time. And so when I looked at the stuff I was doing, when I looked at the stuff like Serengeti was doing, when I looked at the stuff Shabazz Palaces was doing, it seemed like this new wave of people coming up doing something different. And to me, like, that was the wave, is to like have each artist celebrate their own artistic values in rap music. Because to me, that's what brings the expectations of the genre back up, when people are like really following their own whims. And then you really get whimsy in rap music, which is a very important thing to me. But I feel like finding whimsy is really about following your artistic impulses in a very selfish way. When I look at the music of other genres I like, when I look at They Might Be Giants, they're not chasing something. They get melodies, they get production in their head, and they make what they want to hear. That's always been my guiding light. That's always been my North Star. That's always been the music that I wanted to hear. It's like that sort of selfish rap music. So I've always done that. I have been struck in the last couple of years by another impulse, which is to be a little less selfish. I'd say be a little less selfish, personally. I think other artists could stand to be more selfish. But sometimes I find myself in a room full of 500 people rapping, especially if it's not my show, like if I'm opening for somebody and I'm up there doing my thing, which I hella enjoy. I really love all of my music a lot, or I wouldn't even have the courage to show it to y'all if I didn't love it. But sometimes when you're up there and you're performing for a room full of people, you inevitably ask yourself, why did I write these words? Why am I saying these words? What is the point of this exercise in this moment? And I didn't always have an answer for that. And so I've been struck by this feeling that sometimes I should maybe be a little less self-indulgent to try to have moments with people that aren't just about me, because that doesn't always feel good. There's a shared sort of human thing that I also want to get into sometimes. So it's not like, oh, I want to just completely flip and make music for other people. But if you imagine that there's a spectrum where on one side it's just me having a conversation with myself on stage, and on the other side of that spectrum it's got nothing to do with me. It's all for this us. Sometimes I want to move the needle back a little bit more towards the middle. So if he means that I want my music, my rap to be bigger than me, he might be on to something there. And I do think that does come with a little bit more maturity from me, and kind of just looking back at what I've done and the reasons why I made stuff, to be honest, the reasons why I made stuff. And because the other part of it is this too, like I said, a lot of where my stuff came from was conversations that I've been having internally, like it says earlier, inner conflict. It's been a theme through a lot of my work, but I've done a lot of self-work. Making the music was a lot of self-work. Going to therapy is a lot of self-work. Those conversations internally are different now. Some questions that I ask myself, I have different answers to now than when I first started making music. And I feel like some of those answers now are going to be a little bit more universal and a little less just about me. Open Mike Eagle's feature on Billy Woods' Fool's Gold marked one of the first times he addressed MF Doom in his work. I mean, probably the first time I addressed him outwardly. In fact, I said his name in that song. That verse was literally about one of the times I went to a fake Doom show, and I wrote about that experience on that song. On Component Systems for Doom, Eagle paid tribute to the late supervillain on a new rap festival called Falling Loud. He reminds a new generation that mortality only looms as large as you let it. You probably drink the ashes of dead people all the time and don't know it. I'm not sure I 100% understand what he means by that either, but I don't think I have to understand. The album ends at its emotional peak, the heaviness in his voice evident throughout Closer, mad enough to aim a pyramid at you. Each time he emphasizes the word everything, he pauses ever so slightly to soak in its gravity and totality, the anguish, the love, the nostalgia. There is a lot of emotion in that song. Debating on whether or not I should give more insight on that song, and I think I'm not. I think I'm gonna let that song be what it is. Or if I say it anywhere, it'll be on the Hella Personal podcast on the Patreon. But that song has a lot of emotions in it. One challenge I'd like to present to people, and I don't know if I did this when I played the album for the release stream. There's a specific song I reference in the hook of that song. When I say something about some double dutch and some dancing, that is referencing a very specific song from another artist. And if anybody ever guesses what that is, I'll gift you a sub or some similar sort of prize. After 20 years of making music, Eagle seeks a kind of closure within his own discography. Again, I debate that. I think that there's a way that he worded that earlier that's probably a little bit more accurate. This closure within his own discography, that gets it back to the kind of selfishness that I'm actually trying to get away from. So I'm not completely on board with that sentiment. Another Triumph Ghetto Engineering becomes a personal scrapbook and an open letter, tangible evidence of who he's become through fatherhood, divorce, and 9 solo albums. Okay. So I was saying on social media yesterday when I presented this review that there was one thing that I had a real problem with, or that I would openly dispute. And different people guessed what that is. I don't think I saw anybody say the real answer. And as you've heard, there's plenty that I have like nitpicky sort of I wouldn't say disagreements with, but certainly I think need a little bit more unpacking in terms of my intentions coming into this project versus their perceptions. Because that's the other thing too. You learn very early on putting work into the world that once you release it into the world, it's no longer yours to control the perception of. You can do everything that you think is necessary in order to provide the context that you want to provide. You can come out and tell people exactly what stuff means. And in some cases, I do that. But even then, people are going to have their perceptions. They're going to receive your work however they're going to receive it. So you learn that. And once you learn that, you don't necessarily want to call somebody else's perception wrong. Like there's certain things I've had to openly say, hey, that's not it, because there's bigger implications of it. Like there's people who believe I have beef with a rapper named Little Ugly Man because I said something about white rappers rapping in a hood voice on advice raps. And I said something about don't do videos with your back to the cameraman. And apparently Little Ugly Man did both of those things. So people thought I was dissing him. I, to this day, have never heard a Little Ugly Man song in my life. I don't know who he is like that. And so I don't have no problem with him. He's not somebody I'd have that sort of ire for in any sense. So when it gets to that level, yeah, I got to push back. But for the most part, with people's interpretations, I don't want to just smack them down if I don't agree with them, because again, once you put the work out into the world, it's out of your control how people receive it. But the thing that I have a problem with in this article most, after 20 years of making what kind of math? It is 2023. In 2003, I was in Carbondale, Illinois, in my junior year in college. I hadn't even written a rap song till 2002 because I had to do a show. All I'd ever done up until that point was freestyle. And this band called Spare Parts on our campus, because I was the freestyler. And I would always rap at every show. I'd jump on stage and freestyle. I'd be invited to. I wouldn't be taking over other people's stuff. But people knew me as the freestyler. But they wanted to put me on the bill. So I had to have a set. So I had to write some rap songs. So, I mean, at that point, I wouldn't even call that making music. I didn't put out an album till 2010. 23 minus 10 is 13. I don't know how this person got 20 years of making music. Put out an EP in what, 06? Which I don't count at all. I don't count that at all. You'll never see me putting that up on a streaming. You'll never see me talking about that as a thing. I didn't know what the hell I was doing at all. In 2010, I barely knew what I was doing. But that's the music that I stand on as my debut. And maybe I'd say 2009, because I put out another Roadside Attraction, that EP before that. And I'd stand on that music too, even though I made a lot of recording mistakes on it. Still, 23 minus 9 is 14. It's not 20. I have not been making music for 20 years, okay? And maybe if a person thought I'd been releasing albums for 20 years, then they see this as me trying to tie up a discography. I don't have to tie up a discography. I'm just making music. 14, 15 years if you want, but not 20. I ain't been making music for 20 years. That's really frustrating to me, especially because my mortality, my legacy as an independent artist is something that's on the front of my mind a lot. And I don't know, just the thought of if I had been making music for 20 years and still hadn't reached the place I wanted to get to, that'd be so sad to me. That would be so sad. Like, I'd just be making albums crying. And it, again, it's not like I just started or something like that, but 20 years. I don't know how you get that. I don't know how you get 20. He did all this research. I don't know how he got 20 years. That's crazy. That's the part I had the biggest problem with. That math don't add up to me. I don't get it. The discography starts at 2009. It is 2023. Okay, that is 14. That is not 20. There's a big difference between 14 and 20. A 6-year-old is not a baby. Okay? 6 years is important. And that's largely it. So that's the review. Another triumph of ghetto engineering, a 7.7 from Pitchfork. And I think we should celebrate playing some project. The wrong way on a one way. I'm off base in a fun way. Turn the soul for the blockade. The wrong way for the feng shui.